Today's daf is daf Nun Hey. And we're going to learn the Mishnah now. Hanoder min adogon. So he took a neder that he should not benefit from dogon. And dogon refers to the chameshes mine dogon. There are 5 species of dogon. And yet, Rabbi Meir is machadish here at the beginning of our Mishnah that also beful hamitzri. So this is a type of a legume, of a fool. And if it's yavesh, if it's dry, then Rabbi Meir says that it's included under dagon, because Rabbi Meir has a new definition of dagon. Now let's keep in mind that in the previous Mishnah we spoke about Pul Hamitzri Lach. Lach meaning that its olim, its leaves are still edible as long as it's moist. And that's included under the Isra of Hanoder min a Yerek, because a Yerek is something that has olim. However, Hanoder min a Yerek would be mutter biyavish. And in the case of Hanoder min ha Dagon, it's the exact opposite. That full hamitri yavesh is asur, but full hamitri lach is mutter. Now, why does Rabbi Meir include full hamitri yavesh in the language of Dagon? And Rabbi Meir takes the noun and sort of converts it into a verb. Dagon is a noun, and digun is the verb. And according to Rabbi Meir, anything that's subject to digun is called dagon. And that's the way people speak. They include under dagon not just the chamisha mine dagon, but also anything that's subject to digun. Digun is a verb that describes hamadas kri. Kri is when you pile it into an arema. And just like in the 5 species of dagon there's digun, so too in full hamitzri, and for that matter for all kitnios, as long as they're dry, then they make it into a kri. A kri is called a goren, a pile. Chachamim omrim eino asur el b'chameshes haminim. The Rabbanan take a more narrow definition of the word dagon, and they assume that a person who took a neder prohibiting himself from dagon means dagon. And that means the chameshes mine dagon. We're not going to refer to the verb of digun, but rather we're going to limit ourselves to the noun of dagon. And dagon only includes the 5 species. The Mishnah continues. Rabbi Meir Omer, even though I disagree with the Chachamim about the meaning of the word dagon, but I concede that anodim and atfuah, if instead of the word dagon, he substituted the word tfuah, then tfuah for sure, since it doesn't have that verb of digun, eino also v'chamesh saminim is limited in the kavanas lashon b'nei adam to the 5 species of dagon. Here's where I disagree with you, Rabbi Meir, and this is more or less a review of what we saw in the Reisha, that anything that we make a goren out of, anything that we make a kri, ma'amidim lahem arema kri, like full hamitzri hayavesh, and for that matter, all kitnios, all dry legumes, are included under the word dagon. But tfuah, I concede, says Rabbi, to the Chachamim, is limited to the 5 species of tfuah. Umuta v'peros ha'ilan u'v'yerek. However, and this seems to be pretty obvious, that when he takes a neder in joining himself from tfuah, he doesn't include fruits that grow on the trees or vegetables that grow in the ground. Because even though in the case of Nodam and Adogan, Rabbi Meir expands it to include anything that's subject to digun, but the fruits of the trees and the vegetables that grow from the ground are not subject to digun. You don't make a goren out of them, an arema out of them. The Gemara asks the following: Lememra, shall we assume, based on Rabbi Meir's ruling in Anodim and Adagon, that it includes all dry legumes? The Dagon called the Midgan mashma. Dagon means anything that's subject to digun. Midgan is digun, in which you pile it up in a kri. Masechet Rav Yosef asks a question from a pasuk in Divrei Yomi. And Rav Yosef is going to prove from the pasuk in Divrei Yomim that the word Dagon is limited to the 5 species of Dagon. So when we take a look at this pasuk in Divrei Yomim, Beis, Perek Lamed Aleph, we're talking about, in historical context, Chizkiyahu HaMelech. And Chizkiyahu HaMelech made many, many different takonos, mostly in his attack against Avodah Zarah, to uproot Avodah Zarah from the land of Israel, but he also wanted to be machazek the mitzvah of Truma and Maseh. Truma given to the Kohen, and Maseh to the Levi. And in that context, the pasuk, in a sense, gives an appreciation for the work and the achievement of Chizkiyahu by saying Kifrotz HaDovar. Kifrotz HaDovar means that there was a chizuk and a hisamtus through the takon of Chizkiyahu, and Hirbu Bnei Yisrael, and Bnei Yisrael started being very careful about Reishis Dagon, Tirosh v'Yitzar. So that's the first category that they were careful about. And this is the category of Truma from Dagon. And then the pasuk says, V'chol Tvuas Sadeh Larov. They gave a massive amount of Maseh, so they fulfilled and lived up to the expectation, the agenda of Chizkiyahu, both with regard to Truma and Maseh. So when Rav Yosef reads this pasuk meticulously, he sees that there are 2 categories here. There's one category called Dagon and another called Tvuas Sadeh. And the beginning of the pasuk, it says that they brought the Truma from Dagon. And later in the pasuk, it says they brought from Tvuas HaSadeh. So it's apparent from this pasuk that there's something called Dagon, and then there's something beyond Dagon, which is not included in Dagon, but rather is included in Tvuas HaSadeh. And therefore, says Rav Yosef, that apparently the word Dagon itself is more limited and restricted. It's only when you add another category called Tvuas HaSadeh, then you expand it to include other kinds of vegetations that grow from the ground. And Rabbi Yosef therefore turns this into a kasha on Rabbi Meir. Ve'i Amrit, according to you, Rabbi Meir, that Dagon means kol the midgin mashma, that anything that is subject to digun is included under Dagon. Is what does the pasuk need to say that Kifrotz HaDovar Hirbu, and mention with regard to the bringing of Trumas and Masros min Dagon that they also brought from Tvuas HaSadeh? Because Tvuas HaSadeh, which could refer to other kinds of, let's say, kidneos, is not included under Dagon. It's only after the pasuk adds this category called Tvuas HaSadeh, then and only then can we expand the definition of Dagon to include Kol the Midgan. Omar Abai comes to defend Rabbi Meir, and he says the truth is that Dagon includes Kol Midi the Midgan, not just 5 mini Dagon. The pasuk had to add Kol Tvuas Hasodeh Lasuye Peras Ilon Biara. And this is an amazing chiddush here, that Chizkiyahu Melech was machazik the people of Israel, not only with regard to Midid the Midgan, but even with regard to an expanded definition of Chuvas and Masros, to include Perel, Se'ilon, and Yerek. Now, the truth be told, that the Rambam Shita is that in Zeisim Vanovim, there's a Truma Doraisa, but everybody agree, and the Rishonim disagree with the Rambam, but all the Rishonim agree Pe'echad that the mitzvah of Truma does not extend to include Peres Ha'ilon. Even the Rambam agrees that beyond Zeisim Vanovim, you talk about oranges and apples and so forth, there's no mitzvah of Truma, it's all D'Rabbanan. And apparently, Chizkiyahu Melech, in his effort to be machazik the people, was successful not only with regard to Truma from Dagon, but even with regard to Persil and Yerek, which are D'Rabbanan. We go on. The Mishnah says, Rabbi Meir Omer no diminat tvua. Here he agrees to the Chachamenu Aser El B'Chamesh Saminim Om Rabbi Yochanan. Akol Mo Divino Diminat Tvua Shein Aser El B'Chamesh Saminim. Even though the Mishnah quotes Rabbi Meir, it doesn't mean just Rabbi Meir. It means all the Tanoim agree unanimously that Tvua is the more limited definition, the scope that is restricted to Chameshes Minim, Tanya Nami Hochi, and we have a brisa to support Rabbi Yochanan. Shavin, both Rabbi Meir and Rabbanan agree, B'nodim and Tvua Sheinu Asr Lev Chameshes Minim Pshita. What would be the Havamina otherwise? To include something beyond the Chameshes Mini Dagon and Tvua. I mean, Bishleim of the word Dagon has that extra meaning of Digun, but not Tvua. Mal de Tamar, I would have thought Tvua Kol Mili Mashma. Now here we have to introduce Targum. Without Targum, we won't be able to understand this Gemara or the next Sugi. The Targum of the word Tvua is not grain, but rather alilasa, ayin lamid lamid tov al. Alilasa, the root of that word alilasa, which again is the translation of Tvua, is aliyah. What does aliyah mean? Aliyah means something that has the shvach, it has the extra mila of being brought into the house. So the word alalasa has two meanings to it, which we're going to combine together. Number one, alalasa means to take it in, like we say, ayil v'nofik, to take it in. And here it means to take it into the house. And also it means aliyah. Aliyah means shevach, means something that's on a higher level. It's something that deserves shevach. Now, if we take this interpretation of the Targum of the word Tvua, then the word Tvua has a much broader meaning. And it can include anything that has a mila that's very valuable and it's helpful and it's, it's something you eat and so forth and so on, and you bring it into the house. And if that be the case, then Tvua, if he takes a neder, would include anything that he brings into the house, which would expand your definition of this neder and the application of the neder. Kamash malon, that's what the Brisa wants to tell us. No, that we're not going to use for Loshen B'nei Adam in Nedarim the language of Targum. We're going to rather go back to the original meaning of the word Tvua in its context. The lo mashma kol mili, it doesn't mean everything, but rather it's limited to the 5 species of Dagon. If, however, and this is what the Ran points out here, if he would have taken the neder b'loshon Targum, and he would have used the word malilasa, then he would include in his neder anything that's worth praise, it's valuable, that he brings into the house. Mosif Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef asks a kasha, now that we've determined that the word tvua is 5 species of grains and not beyond, then let's go back to the pasuk. The pasuk of Divrei Yomi quoted earlier, Kifrot Sadavar Hirbu Bnei Yisrael, and it says Reishis Dagon Tirosh V'Yitzar Dvash V'Chol Tvua Sadu Masar Kol L'Rov Heviu. And the pasuk is telling us that in addition to Dagon Tirosh V'Yitzar, they also brought me Tvua Sasada. So we see that the word Tvua, as opposed to Dagon, is more inclusive. So forget about the Targum. Let's just talk about the Lashon Kodesh Tvua. The Lashon Kodesh Tvua is kolel, anything that's beyond the Chameshes Minei Dagon. Not the way we interpreted it, that Kuliyavalo Pligi, everybody concedes that the word Tvua means 5 species of grains. Omar Rava answers that the word Tvua that's mentioned in the Brisa, L'chud, and the phrase in the pasuk Tvua Sada L'chud. The word Tvua means 5 species of grains. But the phrase Tvua Sada means anything that grows in the fields, and it goes beyond the 5 species of grains. Now, we've already established that in the Targum of the word Tvua Alalasa, it would imply anything that has a shvach and is brought into the house. So now the Gemara is going to bring a story from which we derive the conclusion that there's a machlokes how to interpret the Targum Alalasa. Bar Mar Shmuel, the son of Mar Shmuel, Pakid, he gave a command on his deathbed, Delitnun Tleisar Alfei Zuzi L'Rava, that his Yarshim should designate 13,000 zuzim, a massive amount of money for Rava. And then he adds, Min Alalasa Dinahar Panya, from the Alalasa that found on a river called Panya. Now, Rava is going to ask Rav Yosef, he's going to send a shliach to ask Rav Yosef a question about how to interpret the word Alalasa. And the shliach who came to Rav Yosef apparently misunderstood Rav. So here's the way the shliach understood Rav. Shalcha Rava l'kami de Rav Yosef alalta hechi mekaria. What is included in the word alalata? Meaning, what rights do I have vis-a-vis the inheritance of Bar Mar Shmuel? Omar, Rav Yosef said, Masnisehi. I'm going to quote a brisa that's explicit in terms of how to interpret the word alalasa. The brisa that we mentioned earlier says the following: V'shavin, everybody agrees, b'nodim in atvua, she'ein oser ela mechameshes haminim. Now, Rav Yosef understood that the word tvua means ma'alasa, and there's no difference between alalasa and tvua. And here we see that the word tvua is restricted and limited to 5 species, and therefore the word alalasa also likewise is limited to the 5 species. Amalei Abai objects to Rav Yosef and he asks him, Midame, how can you make a comparison between Lashon B'nei Adam when they use the word tvua and when they use the word alalasa? Alalasa is different than tvua. Tvua, lo mashma l'chamesh saminim. If they use the word tvua, then they're limited to the 5 species of Dagon. But if they use the word alalasa, like in the case of Bar Mar Shmuel and his tzava, kol mili mashma. It means anything that's worthy of praise, anything of significant value that a person brings into his house, not just tvua, but other properties and so forth and so on. So we're not limited to the chameshes minei Dagon. Now you could imagine that Rava, when he heard the Shliach come back, conveying what Rav Yosef had responded, that alalasa, like tfuah, is limited to the 5 species of grains, you could imagine that Rava was disappointed. He would have liked to have collected his share in the estate from much more than just tfuah. He wants to get other nechasim. Adrila kami de Rava. So when the Shliach came back to tell Rava and convey to him what Rav Yosef had responded, that alalasa is limited to the 5 species of grains, Amar, Rava declared, Holo kami boile. I never even had a question about the word alalata. The alalata called mili mashma. I certainly understood. I didn't need Rav Yosef's signature to sign on and approve that the word alalasa in Targum includes any davar shvach that a person brings into his house. But if you want to know what was the question that I meant to send, that was meant to be sent to Rav Yosef, and the Shliach apparently messed up here, Hadodi boile, this is what I had a question about. Schar batim uschar sfinos mine. What's the status of rental funds? They used to rent out their homes, like Airbnb today, and their yachts. Is that included alalasa? Why? And here the Stadei HaSafek, this is where Rava vacillated, and this was the question that he meant to send to Rav Yosef. Mi amrinon, should we say, came under Pachasam Lava Laltahi. With the passage of time, a yacht or a house goes down in value. Again, this is not necessarily typical of our society where real estate is always on the way up. But if you talk about the physical structure of an object, like a boat that's made of wood or a house that's made of whatever it's made of, then the more you use it, the more it deteriorates with the passage of time. And therefore, it's not included under alalasa. Alalasa is something that is mashbiach. It gets better and better with the passage of time. Not something that devaluates, but something that appreciates in value. Oh, Dilma, here was the second side in Rava's stuff. They came into lo yedia pachsayu alaltahi. Shall we say that since this pchas, this devaluation, is not something that you can see immediately, it's a gradual change over the course of many, many years. Therefore, it's included under alalata. And in fact, you could say, according to the second side of Rava, that since over the course of years, although there may be some element of deterioration where the physical properties of a sfina or a bias depreciate, but nevertheless, over the course of those years, he's collecting rental fees, which more than offsets any sort of devaluation, and therefore it's still called a davar shemashbichin also, and it's included under alalasa. So therefore, I'd be able to collect my share in the estate, even from schar batim and schar sfinos. Amru Rabbanan kamed Rav Yosef. When the messengers came back from Rava to Rav Yosef, it became clear that the question that was presented to Rav Yosef was not at all a question in the mind of Rava, that alalata certainly included way beyond the 5 species of grains. Omar, and Rav Yosef gets very upset. And if Rava had his own answer to this question, it was partial to him that alalasa includes kol mili, is amai sholachlon. Why did he fool me, send a shliach to ask me what is alalasa? And here we have a very important comment. Even though Rava's question was not about the definition of alalasa, it was partial to Rava that it goes beyond chaveshis meaning dogan. He was only asking about schar sfinos and batim, but mikol makom kevan sheikar mashmaus alalasa shekol kol mili Rava was guilty, this is all in the name of the Shita Mekubetzes, of not being very precise about his question. And as a result, Rav Yosef got insulted, Ikpid Rav Yosef, because he felt, Rav Yosef, that Rava was asking him a question which he already knew the answer to, and he didn't have any doubts about it. You know, imagine you ask a question to a Gadol B'Yisrael, to your Rebbe, and you know the answer. Means you're going to ignore the Rebbe's answer in any event. It doesn't mean anything to you. Shama Rava finds out that Rav Yosef was upset with him and mocked it on him. Also, coming to Ma'ale Yom Kippur, he comes to him on Erev Yom Kippur. Why in Erev Yom Kippur? That's the time to be mefayis, because the Mishnah says in Yuma that Ein Yom Kippur mechaper al bein adam lechaver shivakish mechila b'yiratzeyu. So it's absolutely necessary for Rava on Erev Yom Kippur in order to achieve Kaparas Yom Kippur to be mefayis Rav Yosef. In those days, they used to pour water into concentrated wine in order to dilute the wine, because concentrated wine is too difficult to drink. And there was a certain ratio that between water and concentrated wine that was generally used. And I'm not sure exactly what that ratio is, but it's less than 3-to-1. Three volumes of water against 1 volume of concentrated wine. Rava had a different way of diluting wine. He would require more than 3 chalakim of water. I guess he wanted it to be more diluted. He felt that it was still too sharp if you did it the normal way that other people did it. And why is this important to us? Because Ashkel Shami Davikomozi Kame Kosa the Chamra. Amalei, Rava says to the Shamash of Rav Yosef, Havli, give it to me, give me the concentrated wine. The Imzigleano. I have my own method and proportion of water to wine in order to dilute the wine. Now Rav Yosef was blind. Yoav Levikomozik Iu Kosa the Chamra. The Shamash gave over to Rava the concentrated wine, and Rava did the meziga, and then the Shamash took this wine and presented it to Rav Yosef. Very interesting that on Erev Yom Kippur they're drinking wine, and that by the way seems to be supported by the Goran Yuma that says that's why they recited Vidui before the Suda Masechet, because they're afraid maybe he'll get drunk. Anyway, Kika Shasi, Rav Yosef tasted the wine. Omar, he says, Hadein Mizga Dami LeMizga de Rava, Rava the son of Rav Yosef Bar Chama. In other words, he sensed in the taste of the wine that it was Rava who did the Miziga. Amalei, so the Shamash says to Rav Yosef, who knew? Rava's right here, he's standing in front of you doing the Miziga. And that's the way Rava was mashpil himself to do the work of a servant in order to be mafayis Rav Yosef. So that's called hashpala, that's called busha, and that's a way of doing tshuva. In Rav Nachman, in the Torah of Rav Nachman, he seems to assume that there's no such thing as tshuva without busha. But in fact, even in Rabbeinu Yonah, many years before Rav Nachman, in his Shari Tshuva, writes about the significance of busha, of hashpala, in the context of tshuva. Amalei, so Rav Yosef is going to get out of Rava the words busha. Lo tesev akarech adi amrit le perusha da'adein milsa. I want you to interpret for me a pasuk in Midbar Chaf Al. Umi midbar matana mi matana nachliel min nachliel bamos umi bamos hagai asher b'stei moav rosh hapizkom nishkaf al pnei simon. And it seems like the pasuk is going through various machnos of Klal Yisrael. But what's the deeper meaning of this whole long enumerated list? Amalei Rava darshans the entire pasuk, and the Mefarshim say that Rabbi Yosef knew the drush of the pasuk, but he wanted to get it extract it out of the mouth of Rava, because this was Rava's piyus, exactly fulfilled by Rava what he interprets in this drasha. Right, the pasuk begins with midbar matana. Once a person lowers himself, he's mafkir himself, he teaches Torah to everyone like a midbar. He's mufkar lakol, he shares his Torah with everyone, he doesn't try to hoard it for himself. Torah nitna lo matana, he will remember his Torah. That's the gift of matana. V'skayeves b'yodav ve'ena mashach. Shedemar midbar matana. Oh, now he gets to the next level. Kevin shenitna lo b'matana. Once he's guaranteed that he won't forget his Torah because he was mafkir himself, is nachlo el. He has the nachlas Hashem, and that's called shenemar mimatana nachliel. Nachliel means nachlas Hashem. God give him a nachla, and it's permanent and it's eternal. Kevin shenachlu el olel gdula. Once Hashem gives him this nachla, then he rises to gedula. Yeah, but if he rises to gedula, it might go to his head. Shenemar mimatana pomos imigbia atzmo. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mashpilo, and that's the next part of the pasuk. Shenemar umibamos Hagai. Hagai is an emek, it's a ravine. Not only does Hashem be mashpil this person because he's so full of himself now, he's a misgoyer, right? Because he's zochet to gedula through nachlas el. Then beyond that, Ella, as we'll soon see, the people will humiliate him. Sheshokim oso bekarka. They push him down because he got too high up. Shenemar, it says later in the pasuk, V'nishkafa al pnei Yishimon. That's the end of that pasuk in Bamidbar Perek Lamed Aleph. Chafal, sorry. Now, what's the purpose? What's the ultimate goal? After HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mashpil him, chozer bo, he leaves out his gaiva, and he becomes a Baal shiflus. HaKadosh Baruch Hu magbio, and then once again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will raise him up,